minutes this morning to catch up to Philip Martell, Superintendent of the River Valley School District, who has written another op-ed piece, and you can find that in the news story we wrote about it this morning. Just click on the story, open it up. You can read what we wrote, but most importantly, you can read what he wrote. There's a link right there, and so find out what he thinks about the topic of school funding, which is interesting, especially at this time of the year. Our visit presented by Marcus & Mack, voted best law firm and best personal injury lawyer 3 years in a row in the Best of Indiana County contest. Visit them online at marcusandmack.com. State budget still not decided. Guys like Philip Martell are waiting to see what's the final number, what is coming to us in terms of funding from the state. But Phil, he says that, when it gets right down to it, the whole system's broken and needs to be torn apart and started all over again, right?
It really does, because, this formula was put in place, and even, 40, 50 years ago, and now the recent ruling that came out last year, supposedly making it more equitable, is the furthest thing from the truth. I mean, and, you can't get a straight answer from Harrisburg. I know Senator Pittman's asked, and I've asked, what is this actual formula? How's it broken down? Because what you see now are rural schools like River Valley, getting penalized, and then schools that are continually failing, not increasing student achievement, or basically broke. They just keep pouring money into the system, and it's like Groundhog Day, Todd. Something has to change, and how we fund education in this state cannot be relied solely on property taxes anymore.
Yeah, and we understand that in this half of the state. Unfortunately, in other portions of the state where property taxes are not so much a big part of their formula, like in Philadelphia, lawmakers there are just as rigid in their opposition to changing the formula as we are about wanting the formula to change. So it's really a difficult thing. They've been working on this for decades and haven't found an answer.
They really have. You look back when the state's personal income tax was conceived, I think in 1971, it was supposed to go to fund education. When the gaming revenue was put in place, it was supposed to go fund education. They've claimed they wanted to do all these, but it never seems to happen. And that's really my concern now with the legalization of marijuana or even skilled games. There needs to be hardcore dedication to fund public education. But also there needs to be accountability measures put in with this, because, there are certain performance measures that if a district can't meet, it's not their fault. But then they have to look at consolidating. You can't be having systems that are graduating 26 students now. I know a few of my colleagues, that's what their graduating class was this year. Mm-hmm. It's not a sustainable model, and these communities are struggling to fund that district off of property taxes. And they're doing, more importantly, a disservice to the students, not giving them the proper education that they deserve.
Yeah, their tax base shrinks, and their educational requirements are what they are. Nothing ever goes down in terms of expense, but revenue possibilities, they always go up. So there are 500 school districts here in the state of Pennsylvania. What's a more comfortable number?
When you look at how that happened, where it went, I think half of that really works, because that's really where it exploded from, and I think whenever it was in the late 60s and 70s. But, really that's where we need to be. And it's just it's tough, though. I get it. We always said when we merged Blairsville, Salzburg, it's tough to kill one mascot, but we end up, we killed two. Yeah. So, but we look at the outcome now when we were able to take those resources and put it back into the system with the development of the STEAM Academy and other things. I mean, it's a proven method that could be done. And, as I said, it's just, when you look at the overall assessed valuation in these counties, Todd, this is the other part of the problem. They're going down significantly. Well, your system's funded on that assessed valuation number. So that goes down. It means you're collecting less taxes. So it's going to be a contributing problem. And that's why when you look at a hybrid model that some of these other states are doing, or you look at a new revenue stream, Maryland is taxing all digital media as far as anything from software sales to streaming. Well, if you want to buy Netflix, that's a luxury. Then you should pay sales tax on it. And maybe that goes to offset the need for as much property tax, which is hurting our seniors and really hurting everyone in the community.
Yeah, the idea of expanding the tax base through removing exemptions is a big part of what you wrote.
It is. And, it really kind of jogged when you had Senator Pittman on, and he talked about at least that they're going to look at some things. But when you look at our sales tax, some of the antiquated things, but really the inconsistencies. We tax some shoes, but not another. We don't tax chewing gum and something else, but we don't tax. I mean, it's it's all over the map. So they really kind of need to sit down and figure this out, because these revenue shortfalls are not going away. And that's why I don't agree with the governor wanting to drain the fund, our state rainy day fund, $3.4 billion. Well, what are we going to do next year when those expenses are only going to increase? There's no long-term really vision here, and that's what's really concerning, because it doesn't seem like anybody wants to get anything done. And it's very frustrating.
Yeah, I can see the sit down that would happen with people trying to change that sales tax formula, because you have things, just as the example you use, the example that I often use is a bottle of pop. If it's a part of a six-pack that is considered a grocery, then it's not taxed. But if it's in a cooler and you pull it out to get yourself a cold drink, that is taxed.
Yeah, that's a great example. And I think you have strong lobbies maybe, and that's how some of this stuff come out, like with these individual negotiations. But they got to get realistic. Like, nobody wants to obviously hurt small business. But I kind of look at it this way. If I want to buy a shirt, I'm going to buy a shirt whether there's sales tax on it or not. So there's certain things I think we really need to take a hardcore look at, because at some point in time, all these districts, you can see they're raising taxes. They don't have a choice. And that's why I wanted to point out, it's not the individual school board's fault. They just don't have the money. And then the state changes the formula, which penalizes all of us, mainly the rural schools. And it's just frustrating, because the only place you have to go to generate that revenue is local property taxes. And it kills economic development. It kills a lot of things. That's why we need to look at some type of different mixed method use, like Florida, like Texas. And they're booming. Florida's the most booming economic state in the country. There's a model there to follow. And it's very frustrating that we can't get these things done.
All right. So we have the revenue end of it, the spending end of it. You look at that as well.
You have to, because it's just these costs, you look 30% healthcare over the last 3 years. Different expenses are out of our control. We did see not as high increase this year, which is really good. But I just think there are different options. But there's certain, 75% of our budget in River Valley is fixed cost. Mm-hmm. That doesn't leave us a lot of room. And unfortunately, when you're doing cutting expenses, you're putting more kids in a classroom with less resources, and that's not good for our students. And that's another part that's frustrating, because something needs to change either way.
School districts, their superintendents, their administrative staffs, their business managers, really, you guys are all based on predictability, and you actually use that word predictable as one of the real deficits that we have, is the ability to know what is the expense formula, what is the revenue formula. That predictability helps you to do what you need to do. Here we are with a budget that's a few weeks late, and you still don't know what's the final formula for you. And I know that has to be, you use the word frustrating several times. It has to be really frustrating right now.
It is, because 15 years ago, you could have put together a 5-year expense and revenue model in a school, because what costs were. You looked at the normal cost index, with the ADM increase. It was pretty easy to figure out. Now, budgeting is really year to year, and that's what's really scary, because you can get hit with some type of curveball, lawsuit, something out of left field, and, you just don't, the normal thing, and you just don't know. There's no predictability really right now, and like I said, they don't want to explain how they're funding schools, really. They claimed it was with the court decision, it became much fairer. Well, you can ask a lot of my colleagues. It's certainly not fair for them. Mm-hmm. But I guess what, is frustrating is we're going to keep pouring money into the Philadelphia schools, who've seen a mass exodus in different things of students. And, even the Pittsburgh schools, they're at least looking, I think they were consolidating, closing 14 buildings this year. Mm-hmm. These things need to happen, because that's what you can control. But if not, you're going to be doing a disservice for students by that at some point in time you cut the resources, or you cut teachers that are due to help those students. And you don't want to be in that situation.
We, of course, visited on the topic of charter school funding in our segment last month, and certainly that's a part of that predictability issue as well. So a couple of moments left with Philip Martell, Superintendent, River Valley School District. What are the steps that need to happen in order to fix this thing?
They need to really look aggressively. They need to look at that code. So I'm hoping, that Senator Pittman and the Republican leadership look at that, and look and see what truly could be done to help offset this, because, our seniors they're on a fixed income. It's a tough gig for them, and I get it, but I look at it, the younger generation's paying into Social Security for a lot of them receiving their benefits now, they may not see it by the time they're of their age. So I kind of look at it as we're all kind of in this together. But, we really need to have a sit down on that. And as I said, we need a statewide delegation to talk about charter schools because as I said, and I was right, it's not going to end up at $8,000 and it's not feasible. So what is feasible though? And that's what people need to sit down, something realistic. And that's what really needs to happen, Todd.
Yeah. Going to keep hammering away at it. Again, you can visit our website, wccsradio.com. Click on the story, River Valley's Martell, current funding formula unsustainable is the headline on it. And you can read his thoughts on the entire topic of school funding. Mr. Martell, thanks so much for the visit this morning.